All right, no Gordon Hayward for this one. And we have seen this year lots of people want to trade him. They want to trade him for Miles Turner. They want to trade him for really anybody that comes up. There's a lot of people that are anti-Gordon Hayward. He's making $30 million a year. You've even put out the question, Doug, if Miles Bridges hits late shots, if Kelly Oubre can somehow help when Miles Bridges might be off. Is there a huge use for one Gordon Hayward, and does that make him expendable? Could you trade him at that point? Well, here we have a question after last night's performance, 158 without him on the floor. You have this from Levi_Robertson on Twitter. Does seeing what the Hornets did last night without Hayward, albeit against a bad Pacers team, missing key players, solidify the fact that the Hornets should trade him for the much-needed help down low? Mm-hmm. I think what we've seen, and this is perhaps a problem with all sorts of sports fans, right? One game samples and then trying to apply that to a huge picture happens so frequently. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. When we see somebody performing well, hey, you know, if somebody keeps doing this, see ya to this other guy that hadn't been playing well. And it's all agenda-based, right? Like media, fake media, whatever. I don't want to be like that. But look, after last night's performance, it was nuts. But the two previous games, which one do you want to put more stock into? Is it the one game against Atlanta where they were cold and Gordon didn't play? Is it the same thing against Toronto where they were cold and he didn't play? Or do you want to put it in this 158 performance and he didn't play and say that's the reason they should trade him? Like, Gordon is an important player for this team. If you think you can get some big-time value in return for him, then I wouldn't be opposed to pulling the trigger because he does make a lot of money. He's overpaid, and he'll certainly be overpaid the next 2 years, the last 2 years of his contract. But at the same time, the answer's no. Last night does not have me sold that now we can send Gordon Hayward out.
All right. Well,
and
that's
we'll be
that.
all good.
That's that.
Yeah, just leave him in Indiana. I'm sure some
It's just
fans
settled.
probably, or wherever he is. Yeah.
I mean, does that settle it for you? Does that one game against Indiana settle it for you, Doug?
No, I mean, I think look, Gordon Hayward is in the trade rumor mill. It's official. I've seen him on Bleacher Report. I've seen him in all kinds of trade rumors. So I don't think there's a doubt that, you know, he is one of the possible pieces that the Charlotte Hornets could look to move because of the contract size, because of the redundancy at his position for the Charlotte Hornets right now and what he gives. But I think it's also a difficult decision because there are things that Gordon Hayward does that you could see as very valuable in the playoffs that might not be as valuable when you're playing a cruddy Pacers team. But Nick, I don't think it's out of the question that the Hornets playing this well does signal, without Gordon, does signal something about their viability without him.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, this is a team that's a young team that will learn to do it without them if they have to, but they've struggled to get to that point. I think entering last night, or maybe it's still the overall record, they're 9-22 when he's not on the floor. So that's the sample size I still look at, and it was clearly something that bothered them against Toronto and against Atlanta. I mean, this is a sixth youngest team in the NBA. I think they struggle sometimes when their shots aren't falling to have that focus on both ends of the floor. I think he does bring that to them. And he just kind of does everything well. And I mean, like literally physically connects them on the floor. You notice that missing piece when he's not out there and they're struggling. You don't notice it when they're just ripping threes and they're scorching the net. I mean, that's
Stanging.
Yeah. And they're not going to do that every night, obviously. So if this team, I don't think it's going to happen this year, where not in terms of a trade, but it could. I don't think it will, but I don't think it's going to happen this year where this team is just all of a sudden going to be like, oh, Gordon's not here, but like we know exactly what to do for 48 minutes of basketball in tough games. So I think he's still very much needed for that. I don't think they're, in terms of their timeline and their growth ready for that yet, but it could be next year. I mean, for sure. I mean, he definitely is somebody with his talent, and he's not an all-star anymore, but he's still talented. You could definitely get some value for him.
Yeah, and so I guess that's the question. Let's say Gordon Hayward continues to play about status quo for what he's done this year. Throughout the rest of the season, he's not traded. The Hornets don't do any kind of in-season trade. Let's say they lose in the first round, but they're kind of competitive, right? Let's just go with that kind of hypothetical scenario. Gordon Hayward, 2 years left on his deal, but doesn't end on what was an awful season. we don't expect Miles Bridges to have hit his ceiling, right? Like, we still think there's probably some consistency improvement there for Miles Bridges. Kelly Oubre, can you do something like this again next season? Doesn't have to be 10 threes, 9 threes, breaking records, but can you do something 45% from the field, 37, 38% from three? Can you do that? At that point, I think that's what makes Gordon Hayward more expendable. But this year, to try to get to a spot where you are competitive in that first round series, and then you let him go, then you get out from under that contract. Miles takes a step up. We certainly don't think LaMelo's hit his ceiling, right? I mean, if he's going to be a superstar, then he's going to continue on this incline. You know, Kelly, all these young players that are continuing to develop. We certainly don't think Cody Martin, Jalen McDaniels, right? Like, it's still a pretty young team. I think that's the time you probably look to move Gordon, unless there's just some great value in return this season. You know, I've talked about it. Miles Turner before the injury, I certainly would have explored that and probably would have talked myself into going ahead and doing it. It's going to be a big loss when they lose him. You know, it's going to hurt whenever they trade him.
Yeah, but I think Gordon Hayward's value is predicated a lot on the fact that they don't have a ton of star power on this team. I mean, he connects a lot of pieces because you need to connect those pieces because you don't have other stars that can connect those pieces. I would say if they end up trading Gordon Hayward to get a defensive center that makes them just a little bit better and possibly competitive in the playoffs, then I think that's a wash. I don't know why you would do that. But I'm starting to think about like opening our eyes a little bit to the possibilities that the Hornets could make a move at the trade deadline or maybe in the offseason to bring a star, to bring a legitimate star to Charlotte.
Okay.
I'm tired. Well, here's the thing. It's very difficult as a fan of the Charlotte Hornets to really imagine those scenarios because those scenarios just haven't happened in the past. It's very difficult to see things in the future when those things haven't happened in the past. We don't have the precedent. But I think Mitch Kupchak does have the pieces and the ability to make a deal for a bigger star like a Lillard or a Cat. And we're not even thinking that way. We're thinking so small. I think we should start thinking big. And if they make a big deal and Gordon Hayward is part of that, then I think that's a move in the right direction because Gordon Hayward doesn't by himself make you competitive in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that it is about what you're able to bring in, whether it's via the trade or via the cap space created by it. Because like I said, I think the value you've gotten for 2 years overall has been good, but that's kind of when, if your team is ready, if your core is ready, your young core is ready, then you kind of shake loose of it and see, you know, what you can use it as a building block towards.
Yeah, and when you want to trade Gordon Hayward, if you want to think, I mean, you're going to have to get rid of a decent amount of stuff, too. Does that amount to current players trading for those guys? Or are we just trying to look in free agency? Can you possibly now, with LaMelo, with an exciting team, is now the time where maybe
tick, 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 tick. Listen, we got to get something in here that's going to be not competitive in the first round.
I didn't know what
we got to start thinking bigger and demanding more of a franchise that now has a future superstar or maybe current superstar in LaMelo Ball. I'm talking big time players. That's what I want. I don't want forget Rashawn Holmes, forget Miles Turner, forget Sabonis. I'm talking big players.
Whoa.
That's what I want.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. With the Big Dub hat on, we appreciate it.
I'm a serious man making serious takes here.
No, were you doing this during your take? I don't.
Well, you see, the problem is if you're watching on YouTube, we have these little bars below us, and the bars sit pretty high. And so to make any kind of hand motions, you have to do this sort of unusual thing where you lift your elbows really high to make these
you have to
expressive
do this
takes.
Where,
all right? Listen. I'll tell you something about TV. We're doing TV right now. Nick knows. Nick knows what I'm talking about.
This is exactly how it's done.
I think that should be Nick's celebration. Just the
right.
The
T-Rex jazz hands.
Yeah.
I think,
but they're like they're exactly T-Rex jazz hands.
All right, thanks for making. But that's I want to talk about that. We were talking about the mascot names. Like we were talking with Sean Woodley the other day. Like I want to think T-Rex is one that somebody I think threw at me, and I thought that was kind of hilarious. Like that's one.
Okay, I've got the celebration. I've got the celebration.
Okay,
all right, all right, Carboni. All right. I'm going to do a little play on your name here. Just do one of these.
Okay.
Just do one of these.
Just
driving
ride
the car.
Okay.
Exactly. When you hit the big take, when you got the big feature, and you want what are some of your like channel 9, channel 3?
Yeah.
You want to like shove it in their face? Just give them one of these.
But do I have to do it like? Do I have to like go behind their live shot so it's on their air? Because otherwise, I'm just doing it in my own.
That's a good idea. Well, that's a good idea too, though. It's
just bust into one of their live shots. Exactly.
Sure, though. I'll do that Friday night at the Lakers game. That'll be great.
Perfect. You heard it here first. Thanks for making Locked On Hornets your first listen every single day. Fun Friday coming up tomorrow. We'll talk about what gives us the Hive life. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets. It's your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets is hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. Free and available also on all platforms. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks to Nick for hopping on. Have a great rest of your day.